What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up, guys? I'll record this too real quick. Let me just add recording. Super simple. I'm just gonna go over my watch list here, right? It's pretty extensive. For my Discord, I'll probably consolidate this down at least to 10. I don't know, we might hit 12, but a lot of setups. I'm just gonna kind of briefly go over them because I see a lot of I don't know. I don't want to say like not alpha because there's a ton of stuff that does work, but just a lot of simple structure setups, stuff that's repeatable, stuff that you can. I mean, it's very simple, right? And a lot of these already have bases that have good foundations. It's just about waiting for confirmations on higher lows or reclaims of levels. Really simple stuff where you can have an entry versus a risk and then a simple reward, and then kind of cater it towards your guys' own portfolios, right? However much percent of your account you want to put into this is up to you. But yeah, we'll just start. MU, big one I've been talking about for a while. I caught this pretty much off of this low, right? Kind of adds off 95 to like this 98 level, right? Just this little pocket here. We were taking ads throughout this spot. We got a huge pop. I still have some contracts for like June of next year, or I guess this year now. But really just kind of waiting to see what it does here. Really simple setup. This is a little bit iffy just because we still have a gap that's unfilled here at 81.49. And it just comes down to this gap here, right? Because it's almost like a gap within a gap, right? And if we talk about this like from here to like there, right, we have this gap, but it gapped down through this gap. So we still have to be aware of the fact that this could be a resistance. We've absorbed it 2 times now with the last I guess the last touch of it being December 19th. We had another touch of it December 23rd. And we're kind of pressing back up into this. However, like I said, or I didn't say it yet, but I've been saying it all over Discord and Twitter. Like we're expecting low volume up until like January 17th. We have continual short weeks. We were supposed to have a full week this week, but once again, President Carter passed away, so we have a Thursday off. So I'm expecting still low volume. We're going into a big OPEX as well. So it really kind of comes down to not trying to front run things and expecting low volume, right? So, we are pushing up into this in low volume, but it really comes down to, do we reject here again and then get a sell off like this, or we start to kind of fade off of this and start putting in more lower highs, breach back into that gap, and then get the eventual fill at 81.49, where I'd still look to be a buyer. But we're kind of in like no man's land, right? We're just in purgatory where I don't want to add yet. So it either does that, or what it can do is breach into this gap, which is, once again, I'm expecting sellers. And do we turn this into support, right? Do we break through? Do we press up into 92.68 and then pull back, make 90.90, which is the bottom of the gap, support, and then do we break out again, or do we have to touch it again and pull back again? There's a lot of scenarios that could happen here, but ultimately I want to see this 90.90 to 90.68 become support, and then I think if we can break out and pull back into that, really good opportunity for it to then trade into that gap, as I said before, right, from here to like there, right, because this supply would have been absorbed by now. So really interesting setup here. I've been talking about semis quite a bit. I actually kind of preferred that this undercut because it was a little gappy, right? We had gaps to the upside, gaps to the downside. I always prefer the downside gaps to get filled through some kind of catalyst, right? Whether that be an earnings report, data, if we're trading the indexes, etc. But yeah, this chart looks really good. Just wanted to start with that one. Kind of on the same footnote, I mean, we take a look at AMD. This name has been beaten down. Consistent lower highs, so there's a reason I'm being a little hesitant with this one. But it does look like it could have found a bottom. I've been waiting for this to come down to 115.60. I will not tell you guys why that level, but I was expecting an undercut of this 121.83, kind of like swing low on the weekly, right? And then I wanted to see us get back above. And then from there, I think that this can have a nice move to 132.11. We're starting to see, volume has been pretty dry on each move down. This kind of looks like a 3 lower low accumulation, although we haven't seen the volume to support it, which is, once again, why I'm a little hesitant here. But nice little hammer here on the weekly. Once again, low volume because of the holidays, and yeah, we just expect low vol until the OPEX. But it does look decent because we swept underneath it, we broke back above, and then we kind of pulled back once again on low volume, and then saw a nice uptick in volume with a really strong candle close here on Friday. I started some shares on this one. Will I regret it that I didn't start options? Probably. That's trading. You're going to regret not doing certain things in certain areas. But this chart looks pretty good, guys. I can definitely see this trading back up to this previous support. And this is kind of like an internal low within an external range. So I guarantee this trades back to 132 if we catch a good bid here. And then from there, right, it's kind of the same thing as MU. Do we crack through that resistance? Do we hit this level here? And then from there, right, we have a gap here. I'm expecting sellers to be here, but it's all about once we reject off of that and we catch those passive sellers, how do we react, right? Is it a low volume divergent pullback, and do we hold this 132 as support and then kind of start to build out a nice base when buyers are bidding this spot? And then from there, if we can catch a bid, we should continue up, and then I want to see this become support here at like 130 or 135 to 138, wherever this gap is. And then I think this can continually just start to mark up, right? I think this has a lot of opportunity for 2025 to make its way up into 153, 166, 169, everything that's kind of to the upside. I would recommend kind of going back and looking at, and it's not picture perfect, but this is very similar to 2023, early 2024 Tesla, where everybody hated it. Everybody thought it was going to go lower. People kind of forgot about it. Sentiment was terrible around it, but it started to build out a really nice foundation and left a lot of path of least resistance to the upside with pretty much all downside gaps mitigated, right? So this is kind of the same concept where this could, if it catches a spark, has a lot of opportunity to trade into these low volume gaps to the upside. Really sick chart here. Rivian kind of next. I'm already in this one. I've had my ads since down here. Really just a weekly chart setup, right? I mean, this is, I don't know, this is beautiful. I have no other way to put this. I mean, we kind of had this old low back here from the 23rd, or I'm sorry, April of 2023, which resulted in a nice bounce. Obviously, lower high, right? That's kind of the result here with this trend line. But really, I mean, we kind of broke down underneath this. We retested it multiple weeks, which is a good confluence of knowing that, hey, this is a valid support. Clearly, resistance here now with the kind of the flip of the bid, right? So sellers are now trying to hold that level. But we had a nice harmonic breakout through this. We pulled back to it and created a support here for a couple weeks and then undercut it again. But with that undercut, you guys can notice the spread, right? The spread is always very telling with volume. We kind of sold underneath that spot on low volume and started to see some higher uptick in volume here. And the spread, right, from the high to the low, the candles are much, much smaller versus some of these larger ones, right? So something was clearly happening here. Doesn't mean you always take an entry. You definitely can, especially with shares. I think that's probably the safest route. But we saw a nice rip up, which this candle should have resulted in a new low, in my opinion. This is a nasty rejection, but the fact that we had another inside bar, really tight consolidation inside of this range, I'm looking for a pop and a pullback into that, right? If we can get through that resistance, because you got to think, right? This is a big bar that absorbs likely a lot of sellers, and that's what we got, right? We got to rip through, and we pulled back onto this. I'm not a pattern trader. You guys should know that, but I mean, kind of like a pretty nice, oh, that's going to be black. I hate when it does this. Kind of like a nice little inverse head and shoulders, right? Kind of in that general range. I didn't trade it that way, but I liked this little setup here. And I don't know why it keeps doing that, guys. Does anyone know why it's doing that? I hate when it does this. But yeah, hopefully you guys can see. I'll switch it over real quick. But nice little pullback here on kind of low vol, right? We had a little bit of a higher volume bar here on the weekly right there, but it resulted in a neutral candle as a doji, had an inside bar, right? So something like this, you'd want to see sellers get some higher volume to break it back underneath, and you know, a neutral bar followed by a doji, right, with some of our lowest weekly volume. Obviously, this was the week of Christmas, but that's still, right, there's a time aspect to this. They need to get things down on these shorter dated weeks and kind of going, like I said, into these OPEXs, or else the holidays are going to kind of destroy these. If you guys know anything about Vana, this plays a huge, huge role around this time of year. But yeah, had a really nice rip here, super this is a harmonic breakout. I'm kind of looking, and I've had shares, like I said, at these lows. This was more so a share play for me because of the lower highs and the downtrend. But if it can pull back and kind of base this 1546 spot, I think this is a really lucrative opportunity to take then options, right, and kind of still target 18 as a short-term target, and then potentially 21 to 23, which is up here. I mean, this even goes a little bit higher. I kind of drew this gap quickly. Kind of right there, right? So yeah, 2350. I think this is going to be a share hold up here, but short term would be 1886. So this chart looks fantastic. Another one, guys, it's always important to look at relative strength, especially given that SPY did sell down. And this name breached a gap, obviously, at 56. It's in a very hot theme with ARKK. Obviously, Tesla's kind of leading that. Coin was doing very well. This name, along with Roku, right, kind of breached and held and did very, very nice. And this has been consolidating for 1, 2, 3, 4, right after a nice harmonic break here on this weekly bar through that gap. And it's pretty much just been holding here, right? Really interesting setup. I mean, it has a ton of room up to 73. And then on Friday, we kind of broke out of that consolidation. You guys can see we had somewhat of a downtrend here. You guys can just call it a flag, really. But yeah, kind of broke out here. I did take an entry via options just to be transparent. With a breakout day like that, I always kind of look to get in and off of 618 if buyers end up holding, kind of in that discounted range. I got in right around here, right? And so we had a really nice consolidation, an hourly or a 15-minute flag. I'm expecting continuation here, but this chart looks really, really good. I mean, this is a sick chart considering how strong it's been, right? And it's a really hot theme. SQ, I think I'm late to this one. I thought I would toss this on here, though, just because a lot of people have been asking me about SQ. Not the cleanest area. I mean, this is a 2022 base. It's very similar to, like I talk about these all the time, like Hood back here, right? Hood had this 2022 accumulation. Coin had it way back here, right, where it had this kind of pullback for like your SOS, LPS, right? A lot of these have done this. I'm trying to think of some other ones. I mean, Roblox, kind of the same thing back here, right? I mean, I'm not going to give you guys all of these, but I mean, everything has kind of had the same build out. SQ, no different, right? Roblox is kind of the closest analog in my opinion, but this pulled back really nicely. Had a really, really clean divergent pullback, really tight inside bar and inside week here with a really tight spread. Once again, low volume though because of the holidays, but you know, I'm trying to take it as is, but really clean bar here. Hammer off of that level. I think this is good for a continuation trade above this high here. Right, and I think this sees 99.26, so this could be a really nice trade. I think this can see a really large move, guys. I mean, look how beaten down this is. This is just starting, in my opinion. Definitely want to keep your eyes on this one because it's not just going to stop at 99 if this starts going. This is probably going to go back up towards this range here, like at 140, and you know, I think shares are probably the way if you want to capture that full move, but a very, very pretty chart here. Is Joe in here? Ogum soon? Yeah, dude. If you guys didn't know, man, I'm addicted to the Path of Exile. It's insane. It's insane. And then, once again, on the theme here of semis, I'm big fan of semis. I've been talking about it. I think that's going to be the next leader. I don't know what the catalyst is going to be. I don't know if NVIDIA next week, and there's a lot of stuff, in my opinion, that's going to start building up. A lot of people have forgotten about semis. And I've been trying to like talk about it as much as I can because people are afraid of them, and I really don't think there's anything to be afraid of. If you take a look at SOXL, take a look at SMH, and then the individual setups. This is a sleeper one. Lamb Research. I've been talking so much about this, guys. Just the monthly retest of this old high here. Right, just a pullback, and you guys can see how it's caught buyers with long lower wicks kind of bidding this spot, and then the decreased spread, right? This would be bad if we started to see decreased spread followed by a big fallout underneath this one. That would mean buyers are kind of giving up that bid. Sellers have overpowered with these long upper wicks. Not the case, right? I mean, we're starting to see this thing get really tight, man, and this thing has potential really to just pop, right? I mean, it would start to go back, in my opinion, to these like notable lower highs here. I think with some time this can go back to 101 to 106. I've talked a lot about the accumulation that was happening prior to the split here on October 3rd, so a lot of that inventory was collected into that split. Then obviously the split occurred and they own, you know, the same amount, but they own a ton of shares, guys, so they can mark this up really quickly. Lamb Research, I'm telling you guys, is something to pay attention to. It's just taking a little bit longer than I think most have expected. I'm personally in June of next, or I keep saying next year, oh my god, of this year now. I might add into those, I might even roll out, I might grab some shares, but this chart looks super clean. Last but not least, kind of on my focus list, and this will change, is Oxy, right? Oxy is a very interesting one because Trump was obviously elected. What's everybody looking to get into as Trump gets elected? He's talked about it so many times. Oil, drill baby drill, we all heard the motto. I mean, it kind of built out a really nice support here. And I'll talk about these blue lines in a second, but it built out a really nice support here against these daily and or equal or daily/weekly lows, right? Very clean support where I think a lot of people are like, oh, this looks good. Trump's getting into office. I'm going to take this, right? And we've kind of seen some notable buying occur on these initial blue marks. We saw that sweep that occurred here. I'll kind of move this briefly. That occurred on earnings, right? So really, in my opinion, this was a really bullish candle. I was taking ads here initially. We ended up taking it up to here. Was able to take some trims, but I got stopped out as it broke through. I think a lot of people did, but it's okay, right? You got to keep your eyes on these names, especially when they set up with this one, especially with a theme as hot as oil, kind of going into. We have a 4-year period here, guys, so this is something you definitely want to keep your eye on. But as it started to make its lower lows, right, it's important to also dive into what these lower wicks mean and what these higher volume prints are. And we really started to see, in my opinion, right, and these are always something to look for, right? Early morning sell-offs followed by what ends up being in a consolidation followed by a markup, right? So this is a sell-off, but right, this is also stopping power right at the lows here. If this was a really truly bearish move, this would have had a larger move down, probably would have consolidated and then made a new phase down, right, or a new low. Instead, it has a low, consolidates right off the first 15 and then it pops, right? So there's some buyers that are clearly here. What does it do? It starts to sell off on low volume again with some scattered hammers or new lows that have some good strong lower wicks here. It does make a new low, right? But we talk about this with like a 3 lower low, 4 lower low accumulation. It ends up doing the same thing here where it kind of sells off in the beginning of the day. Large notable wick here in the first hour. Spread gets tight, we have a pop, right? Then once again, we kind of have a new low that's formed on lower volume. We end up having one of our highest volume moves up, and then we start to trend up, right? And now, this is where I'll kind of remove this for a second, and I'll tie this all in kind of nicely. Take a look. Let me get rid of these blue lines. There we go. Take a look at how this monthly formed. Right? Underneath that spot, and this is why it's important to kind of have time behind a lot of your trades, is this basically gave a hammer, right? I would have liked to have seen a little bit more volume here, but really dug out a lot of buyers that were trying to get against that, and it got bid right back up to that level. This month obviously opened and had a nice wick right back to 49, and this has the potential to have a very large move up to 52, 53, and then obviously I could see this getting back up to 55, 66, 54, 92. So this is a really bullish look in my opinion, right? This is a deep undercut. We now have the potential here for kind of a large move right off 49. I mean, I could look for a continuation over these highs here, or maybe just a little bit more of a pullback and it kind of holds here again, and I'd be looking to get in. This name looks excellent in my opinion. Joe, wait, what happened? Ion loves PoE2. Elon? Oh yeah, Elon plays a lot, dude. We were just talking about that. We don't know how Elon plays so much. I think he has like Starlink hooked up and he plays on the go. That dude's crazy, man. ABBV, kind of something I'm looking at. This is like pretty much like a fundamental thing I do, right? This is like a footprint candle. We had a breach of that kind of gap down or that footprint candle, absorbed a little bit of the sellers. We pulled down. What did we end up having, guys? Pretty simple. Right, we had a higher low against the low back here, right, and then we kind of broke out, higher low again. If this can maybe give me one more pullback off 178.57, or I would even be okay kind of taking this over the high here at 184. I think this sees a nice move to kind of fill out that gap there. This is a kind of a picture perfect trade in my opinion. But I think there's more opportunity in Pfizer. Shit, do I even want to show this? This is brought up by someone in my chat, but it is something I was looking at for a while. I think we have a Wyckoff accumulation kind of forming out here. We'll see. I want this daily to form out a little bit better. I actually hope that we get a pop here, right? I would like to see us kind of pop out again, kind of get a higher low, and then get one more move kind of into the middle of this range for like an LPS entry. But this chart looks pretty wild. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to go super deep into this one. I'll kind of delete some of my stuff. But yeah, take a look at where the volume's kind of coming in on the monthly after taking out this low here, right, which is this swing low from here, March of 2020. Look at all the volume that's kind of coming in without a fresh low really happening. Really interesting chart here. I would just keep your eyes on it. I don't know if it's worth front running just yet. Like I said, I would like to see the daily and or weekly shape up a little bit more, but it is kind of setting up. They have their earnings coming up here at the end of January, kind of going into February. I think ABBV reports, yeah, end of January. So these could set up. But besides that, let's keep it moving. I have a lot more names, so I'm trying to just go through these as quick as I can. Like I said, I'm going to personally kind of go more in depth for the Discord and just consolidate this down a little bit more. But there's a lot of stuff that looks good, guys. So if you guys just take any of these and kind of make it your own, I think these are all kind of set up in their own way. Okta, really nice chart here. Low volume pullback post earnings. Obviously filled this lower gap here. Got really close to the 77.56 gap as well. All on divergence, right? So all low volume after the high volume breakout. This looks like it could have a really nice continuation. Whether you want to take it off of the prior gap, which is here, that could definitely be valid, right? Through 83.01. As always, right, I always like to take things on a break and base. That's definitely a viable option. Or if you guys want to be trendline traders, you definitely could take this on a trendline break here as long as it has good volume and has a good strong close through that high on higher volume. This is definitely a valid chart. I should probably include these two together, right? So let's make them next to each other. Kind of the same thing. CRM, really pretty chart. I actually might move this up to my top focus list. This name's pretty, right? I think this name goes back to 350. I like this a little bit better because it did fill the gap. Super strong theme or sector. Same exact thing, right? Kind of pulled back. And if you guys know, right, the first touch of this gap had some of your higher volume. It had a pop, and then it sold back down into this level on lower volume. And we're starting to see a little bit higher of an uptick at that spot again. So this could be a simple buyer that bought, pushed up, rebid that level with some light selling, and then this accumulated again. This looks pretty good. Yeah, I think this goes back to 350. The weekly on this as well. I mean, it did close in a doji, but the daily and followed by this like weekly pullback into just a very known gap looks really good. I do like this chart a lot. This and Okta are probably two of my favorite ones. I guess we can include Snow in this as well. Like Snow, kind of the same look with Snow. A little bit different, right, where we had a peg here. We always want to see the peg be defended, but usually what I expect is that if a peg does start to slip underneath, as first thing that comes to mind is a gap trap, right? A lot of retail traders assume as soon as it breaks a gap that, hey, this thing's going to go fill the lower gap. It's not how it works, right? Especially on something that has as big of a move as this. Typically what we'll see is a little bit of slippage in as buyers are bidding, right? And then what will end up happening is a move back up once they start to accumulate into the gap and we have that change of hands. And then really once we start to recover back above, we'll see sellers get squeezed out. So really what I'm watching is some kind of separation or distance created outside of this gap here to get up, and I want to see some kind of pullback to reclaim 161.16, and I think this has a really nice move back to 180. Take a look at the weekly here, right? The weekly's very, very easy in terms of where it rejected. It was this, in my opinion, it was this old low back here with the gap just above at 190. So 190 calls interest me. I did try to take this back here on this week of December 16th. I got stopped out of this one, but it looks good, right? If it can just kind of give me an entry, like I said, if it can just rip out, create some separation, pull back, and give me a higher low over that spot, it becomes a very simple trade, right? Where you have risk being wherever that low was inside of the gap. You don't have to risk all the way down. You also can give it some room to breathe in case it goes back underneath this spot. But yeah, you have a really nice trade either back to 180 or you can try to target the highs at 190. Yeah, wherever that would be. Let's say it pulls back there. I mean, that's a really simple trade, a 3.5R. Obviously, it differentiates a little bit via options, but you know that's still kind of what we shoot for. So really nice chart there on Snow. What else have I got? Coin. I do have some lottos on here. I have 2 lottos that I'm down about $1,000 on. I hate to admit it, but it is what it is, right? I was just kind of like hoping that this low held right here at 270. I think I took an ad on this day, and we had a little bit of a pop. I was up on them briefly, but during the holidays, I just kind of wasn't paying attention to it, and it did undercut the level, but obviously Bitcoin looks pretty good. This looks like it's pushing back into 270, so kind of the same exact thing, guys. Like this chart looks really clean. Obviously, it's a harder one because premiums are so highly priced on top of the IV. but I do think that this name has a pop here. I mean, if we take a look at the EMAs as well, right, just a simple pullback into those EMAs, nothing super drastic. Kind of the same thing. I think I might take more ads into this one and take my 2 contracts to maybe like 10 if we can get a pop back above 270. Same thing, guys. Literally the same thing. Pull back, reclaim 270, and hold that. Then you can have a pretty simple systematic trade here where you can either risk the lows here and then try to target the highs. We'll have to kind of see how these end up looking when I get my cost basis evened out. But yeah, you can have a really nice trade here. We just want to see get above and get some separation over 270, pull back, hold 270.74. And yeah, I mean, dude, this could even have a move. And if you talk about progression gaps, usually I talk about progression gaps, this could really get a pop all the way back up to 300, right? Realistically, 300 and then get the pullback. It doesn't even have to come down to 270. This can kind of come back and get a higher low above 270. I still think that's valid. But yeah, something that I'm definitely looking at. You have to take a look at some of the other names like Mara, some of the higher volume tickers that we saw in the miner / BTC space. Riot was another big one, right? Just a lot of names caught a notable bid here. I still think Bitcoin has a good move. My God, we have a lot to keep going. Roku, super sick chart. This is another one that, I mean, I had a plethora of things that I was in that I got stopped out of. It is okay, like I said, but some of these names I should have been a little more flexible with. This was one that I took January 17th contracts on. I should have taken March or like June, because the chart, like I said, still looks really clean. It was pulling back once again on divergent volume after this gap here at 77 had been absorbed. And there was a lower gap here right after it had this big pop here through this gap. That was at 75.69, right? This little green label here. It did sell underneath, and of course, spread got tight here, right? And I don't think there's any coincidence that it stopped here, consolidated underneath, and then had a rip through. Now, kind of the same thing, right? I mean, if this can kind of just push up and hit this progression gap and then kind of give us a higher low, I think that this has a very clean entry once again. A lot of people, I saw it all over Twitter, man. A lot of people have been late to this move. I mean, I personally have taken this trade 3 times. I took it here. I think I took it somewhere back here. I've taken it a lot of times, right? And obviously, you want it to be worth the squeeze, right? If you're going to get into this, you want to have good low risk and get a high reward out of it. If you're taking the trade up here at 85, looking for a breakout to get to like 94, I mean, yeah, it looks good on paper. It's an 11% move, but risk to reward is not that good. So the fact that it pulled back, stopped out a lot of people, still looks very good on the weekly, and obviously gives you a better reward, right? And the R multiple is a lot better here. I like how this looks. So still on my watch list. It's just kind of a second tier one. What else? I'm not going to talk about Nike. I'll talk about Uber here. I don't know if I like Uber, though. What do you guys think? This is an interesting one. I'd actually kind of have this be an interactive one. This one's interesting in the sense that it's kind of pulled back to these old highs from back here. Obviously, it had a bid here that made a fresh high, pulled back again, kind of caught this range again, and then made a higher high. Now we're pulling right back into the spot. We're seeing some high volume here with, once again, decreased spread. Very decreased spread. Still uptick in high volume here. Obviously, the low volume week here because of the holidays, but now we're looking like we're going to press back out. This chart looks really interesting because we have a ton of notable footprint candles where we could reject and pull back. And there's no, like I said, it was also what I said, the old highs back here, but this really pulled back into a gap here, right? And it pulled back into the gap. We saw, in my opinion, this is somewhat of an accumulation. We saw a pop out. I think this could hit 65.23, which it rejected on Friday, right? This was the footprint candle, the low. Maybe it pulls back and gives a higher low off the top of the progression gap here, and then it can have a breakout through the top of the footprint candle, pull back again, and then continue up. This chart is very interesting. Do you think weekly distro on this one? I know there was a distribution that occurred back here. I think this was the upthrust, right, or the UTAD. So do you think it's going to go back into? You think okay? So you think this is a reaccumulation or I guess like a redistribution? And it's going to have, because AMD did that, actually. This was a good thing to talk about back here. This is something to kind of have a photographic memory on. This is what AMD did. Then it had a secondary UTAD upthrust, and then it redistributed off of that. And this was the climax high, right? And then it had a new low that kind of got put in. So you think that is kind of the same analog from that? Hey, if you say it, man, I'll take it off. This is one I just had on my thing. Okay. Interesting, interesting. It's just something I was looking at. Because somebody definitely caught here, and these are buyers, right? And it could push out, but yeah, I mean, I could definitely see it happening. This is a really small reaccumulation for a distribution, though. It is a little bit iffy too because we have a ton of potential sellers here at these footprints. So, all right, I'll move on from that one. See, I'm open to things too. It's not that big of a deal. Okay, Lulu, I do have contracts on. Let me make this smaller. Lulu, I do have some contracts on this one too. They're a bit spready, so I haven't gone heavy into these ones, but similar setup to whatchamacallit, Snow, where we had a nice earnings breakout. We had a peg, and it looks like they're just trying to bait underneath 377. I've just kind of been watching it based on the weekly under 377. We haven't had a close underneath. It's still kind of pulling back. I figured the EMAs had to catch up to this one. Obviously, we're still trending up. Everything still looks fine. This is just a really low volume name. OI on this is low, so they are spready, but I think this name still sees some continuation. So if you guys want to toss this on the watch list, I would just kind of keep a risk either off 377 or this like little low here at 366. Just something that's tentatively up there. This is an interesting one. I'll kind of get out of here soon at this point. Delta Airlines, DAL. Gap here, right, where we had a big breakout through the gap. And then a pullback right into this spot at 56.87 to 55, right? Kind of old gap now becomes support. Really notable bid here and notable candle on Friday. Super interesting. They have earnings coming up January 10th. I could see this making a new high, to be honest. Just something that I'm looking at, maybe like a 66 call, just for like a lotto. But yeah, this is an interesting one. What else do I got? Dude. Oh, bro, I might as well show you guys. Dude, this looks so much like AMD's distribution, guys. This looks so much like it. AMD. Back here. This was 100% distribution, where we had kind of like a breakout, kind of like our UTAD, where we had consistent high volume all the way through. Then we had our footprint candle kind of marking the end of the campaign, right, beginning of a new selling campaign. From there, we sold all the way down, retested the high, gave a little pop. I wish we had a higher pop for like a lower high here. I still wish I had taken this a little bit, right? Like right here, I thought we were going to get that and then kind of break down, do something like that. It just kind of melted through, and then we kind of had our LPSY, right? It's our last point of supply right here, and then we kind of melted down from there. I think Apple is doing literally the same exact thing. It's starting to set up. So I want to see how this reacts off 237.23. Maybe if it gives a lower high off of that one, and then we fade underneath 237, like kind of like this, right? Get a weak bid off of that one, lower high, breakdown, retest. I think this thing starts to sink pretty bad. But yeah, this thing looks crazy. Tesla have as like a bearish thing as well. Just now, right? Just as of right now. This did break down. It has, not the best structure as of right now, where we had a bounce off of the spot, lower high, we broke down, we're not pushing back up. And that 414 level is pretty interesting in the sense that was just the old high here, that it should have had a pullback on divergence, right? And then a press out. Didn't quite do that. I had a pretty weak bid once it pulled back into it. And the pullback wasn't divergence. This pullback was on high volume too. So really interesting thing. Tesla might be on the list again if it can kind of push back up and then hold this level, right? And I think this can easily trend back to the highs. But as of right now, I'm just kind of hesitant on watching 414. And I'd rather be a buyer, completely honest, down here versus right here. In the weekly, if you guys I'm sure a lot of EMA traders are looking at this. This is a simple touch with the 9. And this is a market leader, right? This name obviously is kind of getting the most flow too. I mean, we have to talk about that. This thing is definitely leading the market in all aspects. So continuation on this one could be as simple as the 9. Just a strong trend indicator here. Nice little, I wouldn't say this is like a hammer. I mean, it is a hammer, but it's closing underneath a very pivotal spot in my opinion. So we just got to see what it does. But Tesla's for sure up there. But right now it is in the bearish section. And then of course, SPY, right? SPY. I've talked about this one a million times. Get rid of these EMAs. My personal belief was distribution here, right? We had a head and shoulders that set up to bait pretty much all of retail right here, right? And we ended up kind of selling down into a very highly bid zone here, right? Which was our neckline or our gap. We broke down into this. We caught a big bid. We pushed up as a lower high. We sold back down into the spot. We saw, once again, a gap trap. And this was a really steep one down here. But we got back above. I think we end up facilitating towards these dark pool sellers at 595, where they're going to unload a small portion here, right? So we're going to get a push. Maybe we reject. I'm not too sure, but we could start to push up again. And then I think they offload the remainder off at like 601, right? This becomes, like I've said this before, null and void if we push up. You know, let's say we get a higher low, they distribute again, but maybe they take off their orders, or maybe buyers end up overpowering the sellers that are there, right? We could have a flip on that where we get a push out, and if it kind of bases this lower high here, I think this is null and void, where this could just have a rip for a new high. So it's really important to kind of watch this. My plan is to get pretty heavy around 601, but once again, I mean, that's kind of where the risk to reward kind of opposite becomes pretty favorable for puts here. I mean, it's just a risk against the highs here, and then you have a nice little target down to actually hit 576 and fulfill that gap. Right, it's all about bigger wins than losses, right? This is a pretty, I would say, well-measured loss and rewards there. And I have calls. I've talked about this. I'm double dipping this one, so I have calls from this general range that I'm looking to ride up into 601. I'll close out of those and then kind of use not a profit-free trade, but mitigate my risk a little bit by using profits off the call side to then add into the short. Ugh, that was a lot, dude. Holy shit. Sorry for my language, but how many stocks is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, over 20 stocks. But yeah, does anybody have any questions? I mean, I went over a lot. I'm not going to go super deep into them. I just wanted to kind of go surface level. Like I said, obviously I'll go a little bit more in depth with some of these behind the scenes. But just from a simple structure, volume price analysis, I mean, I gave you kind of a little bit of Wyckoff, but I mean, it's pretty simple, right? Some of these names and the risk to reward on them does line up alongside. There's a certain amount, right, that like SPY, obviously I'm bearish on that, but it doesn't mean that I'm bearish on the entire market, right? If this can sell down and hit 576 and certain names are holding up really well, like Roblox did, Roku did, and some of these names still have relative strength versus the market, and maybe some have relative weakness. I kind of have, some I can kind of pull from and delve into. But, at 576, I will start to look at calls once again if this starts to sell and what holds up off this list. Kind of go from there. I don't think I see anybody in the chat, so. Oh, wait, I didn't saw your question. So for PFE to play out, would that require another catalyst market headline? Yeah, I think so. I mean, PFE does have earnings, like I said, kind of going in. And you want this daily to shape out a little bit better, right? You want to get some kind of pop or reinvigoration of kind of like a trend, right? And then you want to see it sell off and then have buyers support a higher low. And then that's kind of what gives you your entry off of that. Yeah, this thing looks good. It just needs to shape up a little bit more. Oh, you're good. You're good. I'll take a look in the Discord here in a second. Just I got you guys. I'm gonna take care of you guys. I'm kind of like your own. I just wanted to go over this because there's a lot of stocks that look good, and as I said, I will for everybody in the Discord. I'll consolidate it down to like 8 or 10. That might be pretty hard, but I mean, yeah, there's a lot of setups that look really good, and it's not like it's not shit like this, dude. I've seen people trying to trade Costco and stuff like that, like. These clusters at the highs like this are pretty ugly. Like I've seen people trying to take longs off of this. I've seen some weird stuff, man. Like people love the cluster trades and just being in consolidation hoping for a rip, or there's a lot more edge in names like this. The reclaims, using the footprint candles, structure on these looks good. Everything kind of aligns for high quality trades here, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot. NVIDIA? NVIDIA is one of those cluster names. I mean, this looks okay. I haven't updated my chart in a little bit, but this is like one of those things where like this looks weird. This is hard to trade because it was easier like if we replay it back like yeah, I guess like here like right? Like when it was able to kind of rip here, it kind of based here. It just looks weird. Doesn't that look weird? Do you trade this often? I'll just ask you. I mean, my personal opinion, I could be wrong. I think Nvidia sells off to 118. I really do. I think this is a distribution. It's taking a lot longer than I would have thought. There's a reason I haven't really looked at it that much, and I've kind of focused on some of the laggers in on SMH. Like SMH still looks really good. This is once again kind of a cluster, but it's holding up very, very well. I talk about SOXL all the time as well. I mean, this is a very simple pullback to this old lower high here, right? And then if we take a look at the volume, like this is an anomaly print, guys. Like we had literally one of the highest volume prints that came off of the retest of this old high here that formed in a hammer. This is the highest volume print we've seen since the 2022 lows of the bear market. That's really weird. Like, and then on top of that, consistent high volume, right? And this is obviously kind of like a doji. We had consistent, obviously it's still high volume, it's decreasing, but the spread's decreasing. We're not breaking the low. We did sweep under it just a tad. This chart is really bullish. I mean, and there's always that possibility of dispersion where the names that have led, right, that had kind of been a black hole for a lot of the options flow, a lot of the overall equity flow, these names start to kind of get sold out of, right, and that starts to go into some of these other names that have potential catalysts for different stuff from like a fundamental perspective or just the chart, right? Some of these names have to catch up. Right? I think Intel, even Intel, guys, Intel isn't the prettiest chart yet, but I think this is setting up. I mean, I would love to see a spring. It's the same thing as Nike. I think, like, I guess I'll talk about Nike too. Nike setting up an accumulation where it could get a spring underneath. Right, if this can sell under, pop back above, reclaim that, I think this has literally an accumulation schematic for 2025 setup. GME, tough. I mean, I'm in shares here. I am in shares. I wouldn't touch this with options. I mean, if I say that, they'll watch. It's gonna go crazy, and you're gonna be like, "What the fuck?" But I mean, this has to hold 29.79. The daily is really hard to trade. I mean, it's obviously got like a nice uptrend here. It's just really, really weird in the sense that it's like up, down, up, down, up, down. It's just kind of chopping, but slowly up. I mean, everybody kind of knows the stair-stepping fashion. This is just really, really dramatic. But clearly, there was this old high here. I would use this as my personal risk at 29.79. And yeah, I mean, there's no way around it. If this ends up getting a pop, dude, like this thing's gonna go. I don't know what the catalyst is gonna be, but I think it goes up either into that gap that I had, or it can push up into 48 right there. I'm not going to be the type to sell you hopes and dreams, though, man. That it goes like to the all-time high, or that it goes to like 125. I have the 125 here because I was trying to show people these are the calls that people are buying, man, for like literally next 2 weeks from now, January 17th. You have to realize like how crazy of a move that is, right? Like that's 321%. Like that's I don't know. That's just wild to me. It's a huge move. If that happens, I mean, that's insane. I mean, you'd make a ton of money shares. I mean, it makes sense for me to personally play shares here, but that's about it, man. Like, I don't really have anything else to talk about with GameStop. It looks reminiscent to the back here, but yeah, I'm not going to be the one to sell hopes and dreams. But yeah, Nvidia, I'm sorry. Nvidia is it's just one of those charts where it's like, I really don't have an edge on this one. You know, it technically did open above that 140 level on Friday. Kind of had a really nice open, barely a lower wick here, and it just ripped all day. But from overall, I just don't have an edge on this one, and I'm just kind of watching it. They do have an event next week, so I would trade around it hesitantly. Just be a little cautious. I think they're talking about robotics, if I'm not wrong, and those usually lead into like sell the news events, especially when you see something move this volatile, right? Like the week before. It's just a little bit weird. Yeah, overall, like I really don't know. I really don't know. Like if I got rid of this level, this chart makes a lot more sense. Like I should have been buying calls off of this, right? This little internal low at 129, 130. But now it's I don't know. AMAT? Naturally, my eyes go here. That's the monthly low. I mean, they all look the same, don't they? Bro, like all of them looked exactly the same. Like all the semis. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, personally, like these all look exactly the same. It's all kind of following the same SOXL, SMH. I mean, they all look really good. The one that doesn't look good is QCOM, but I think even QCOM's shaping up a little bit too. I mean, the consolidation here against this low, bro. I mean, they all look good. I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. I assume there's going to be some kind of catalyst that starts to send all of them. Maybe it is an NVIDIA event. Maybe NVIDIA just runs everything. I could be wrong. But yeah, I mean, that chart looks good. Obviously, it undercut it just a tad. But yeah, the volume on the weekly here, bro. Like, everything looks wild in semis. That's where you bought 129. Congrats. Yeah, it's a sick chart. I mean, if you bought 129, that's literally what I have. But you know, if anything up here, I mean, I'm not going to start a position up here. Like, where would I buy? Right? What would I do? There's no clear pivot point. I mean, I had here because this was the old high, but that's kind of irrelevant now. I mean, you kind of have this zone up here at 150, and you have a little bit of a lower high here on the daily that is irrelevant in my opinion now. Like, I don't know. This is looking a little iffy for me. And you know, if this can sell back down and start to distribute down into 118, I might be a little bit more interested. But as of right now, it's not one of my focuses. I like AMD a lot more. I like AMD a lot more. I need to turn this green. But that's pretty much it. I think I'm going to jump off here. Hopefully that helped you guys. I mean, there's a lot of charts. I covered a lot. I went over it a little bit quicker than I would have liked to have. But really, I mean, that's the basis of trading. Keep it watered down. It's price, it's volume, it's structure, and it's tying them all together. Being patient, letting things kind of break underneath certain support levels and seeing if it can reclaim back above. Look for a divergent pullback once it ends up getting back above. You're really just tying things around these clear pivot points, right? I mean, that's the basis, in my opinion. But a lot of charts I feel like you guys can kind of go back from, select from, make it your own. You don't have to use my levels, but there's a ton of stuff, a lot of stuff, right? Don't just confine yourself to like one thing because there are multiple things, right? And pre-market could move these drastically. I do want to say I would have some kind of bearish thesis there. That's why I do have 3 charts here that I can kind of pull from if things start to fade. But overall, I mean, I'm still pretty excited. And yeah, we have another short week though, so be careful. And then we go right into the January OPEX, so that's going to be interesting too. So that's going to be it, guys. I appreciate y'all. See you guys next time. I'll probably stream again very shortly. So see you guys.